Record. Okay, so for today, we're going to be talking about different avenues to help pay for college. And this is a question. So I work in post-adoptions on the clinical team, and in communication with families, this is something that I'm being asked repeatedly over and over. Families are hearing, oh, well, their kiddos' college is paid for. How do we set up these things? And so this is something that I feel like is super important to talk about because there's some nuances and some things that families just need to be aware of to be able to access these resources. So I'm going to do today a little bit differently. Typically, we'll kind of go through the presentation, and then at the end, we'll have any questions. But there is kind of a lot of information in this, and I want to make sure that everyone is grasping each piece of it. So what I'm going to do is after each section or each little topic that we discuss, I'm just going to take a pause break and see if anybody has any questions about it or anything that they want to add, and we'll just kind of do it that way. Also, these are typically about a full hour. I don't know if we'll have that much today, but I want to leave plenty of time for any questions. So feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. Use the little raise your hand feature. Any of these things are totally fine. So we will go ahead and get started. So for today's goals, we're going to talk about some different funding sources. We're then going to talk about the FAFSA process. And then all of these things will kind of hopefully help you come to the conclusion for the question of, is my child's college paid for? So the very first thing we're going to talk about is the Oklahoma foster care tuition waiver. And this came about as a result of the Independent Living Act of 2000 that was by the Oklahoma legislature. So the main thing that differentiates this particular program is that the youth has to have been in OKDHS or tribal custody for any 9-month period between the age of 16 and 18. So that could be a consecutive 9 months, or it could be maybe they were in custody for a few months when they were 16 and a few more months when they were 17. And so as long as that time between the ages of 16 and 18 adds up to 9 months, then they would qualify, as long as they meet the other requirements. They have to be a resident of Oklahoma, graduated within the last 3 years with their high school diploma or GED, and attend a public post-secondary school in Oklahoma, and certain tech center programs qualify as well. So how is this accessed? First, eligible students can receive the waiver until the age of 26 or until achieving a bachelor's degree, and it's whichever one of those comes first. And as far as applying for the tuition waiver, the child welfare specialist or tribal worker will assist the child in completing the ETV application. And we're going to talk more about that next as our next program. But once that ETV application is completed, then staff will be able to identify which kiddos also qualify for this tuition waiver and send that eligibility over. And then they'll kind of guide you through continuing that process for both things. And then the funds, they're not sent directly to the child or to the family. Those are deposited directly to your financial aid account through your school. And these funds are specifically to cover that tuition. Before we start on the educational training voucher, any comments or questions about that first piece of the tuition waiver? Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question about that.
I do have one, Lacey.
Yeah, go for it.
So we live in Arkansas, but our kids, because my wife teaches in Oklahoma, they also attend an Oklahoma school, but we're not a resident. So does that rule them out of that?
I believe it does, because you have to be an Oklahoma resident. However, I have some resources at the end with the department that kind of handles all of that. And so I will make sure you get that connection to ask that, because it is kind of a weird gray area. But I believe because they do have to be an Oklahoma resident, that it might disqualify them. But we'll make sure we check on that for sure for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Not a problem. Any other questions on that? Okay, if no other questions on that, we'll go ahead and talk about the educational training voucher. And this program came about as a result of the John H. Chafee Foster Care Independence Act of 1999, which was on a federal level. And that really just addressed challenges faced by young people from foster care with programs that help them transition into adulthood successfully. So this is a federally funded program, but it is state administered. So each state kind of has a different way of dispersing it or, handling the application process. But that funding in the program does come from the federal level. So the requirements for the educational training voucher are somewhat similar to the tuition waiver. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. So the first requirement here is that the child either exited foster care on or after their 18th birthday, or they exited care through adoption, guardianship, or reunification after their 16th birthday. So one of those two things, and they're attending a Pell eligible college or vocational/technical school. So how is this one accessed? So just like we talked about with that tuition waiver, this one, the child welfare specialist will help the youth in completing that electronic application and getting that submitted. So any eligible students for this are able to receive this waiver until the age of 26 or until they reach the maximum of either 5 years or $25,000, as this is a $5,000 yearly voucher. And then I've added this link down here at the bottom, and I will add this in the chat box at the end. It's here for you if you want to jot that down, but I will go ahead and add it in the chat box. And at the end, if we have some time left, we're going to take a look at this website. But this is our Department of Human Services Oklahoma Successful Adulthood website. And so they're the ones that they have education specialists, and they kind of help with this process for youth. They're able to help workers with this process, youth and parents. And so I'll make sure we kind of look through that website. They have a bunch of other resources as well regarding education and all kinds of other awesome like independent living skills type things. So we'll make sure to take a look at that if we have some more time. Any questions about the education training voucher before we move on to the next one? Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about is Oklahoma's Promise. So this is not specifically a program that is through DHS or, pertaining specifically to foster and adoptive youth. This is actually available to all Oklahoma residents. And it's something that is kind of income-based, but there are some adaptations for different populations that we'll talk about. So some of the general qualifications are that you're an Oklahoma resident, that you enroll between the 8th and 11th grade. If you're homeschooled, that's just by the age of 16. And the deadline is always June 30th of the previous year. So unless it's a weekend, but that deadline will always be very clearly at the top of that application so that you know exactly when it's due. And when I say June 30th of the previous year, that just means, for example, so you have to enroll by the 11th grade. So you would need to enroll and complete that application by June 30th prior to your junior year of school. So the general population income, so this is not specific to youth who have been adopted or in guardianship, which we'll talk in a minute, but this is just kind of that general population income. The federal adjusted gross income, which is identified on that page 1 or page 2 of your tax information, must be less than or equal to $60,000, $70,000, or $80,000, depending on how many dependents you claim. And that's not necessarily dependents living with you, but those specifically that are claimed on that tax return. And then also for the general population, both parents' income is to be included if married and living together. And that is irrelevant of if they are filing separately. And then if parents are divorced, then whoever's the custodial parent will be the one providing financial information for this. Now, with everything, there are kind of some, well, what about this circumstance? What about this circumstance? I kind of listed here the main kind of things we're going to see, but their website does have a FAQ section that goes into a lot of detail and talks about a bunch of different circumstances and whose information would be, put on the application in those situations. And then up here at the top, I've noted any income from a Social Security death or disability benefit does not disqualify the student, but it does need to be disclosed. So you need to tell them about it, but if it pushes you over whatever that limit is, depending on dependents, it's not going to count you out for receiving this. There are also some educational components that I didn't put on here, but there's an expectation of completing the typical 4x4 coursework that every Oklahoma high school kind of abides by. And as long as you're completing your typical course of action through high school, you're almost guaranteed to follow that same requirement. So if you plan to take any different type of coursework or any adaptations to that typical path in high school, you would just need to check their website and make sure that you're still checking all of those requirements. So a few adaptations to the income for this: legal guardianship. So they're identifying a guardian as someone appointed by law. And they did clarify that temporary guardianship, power of attorney, and other temporary situations like that do not count. So if someone has power of attorney or temporary guardianship of a child, and they're filling out this information or this application, that the biological parent's information, or whoever the custodial parent is, their information would need to go on the application. And with someone in guardianship, income is not a factor that needs to be submitted here. All they will need to submit is a copy of that guardianship paperwork. So for youth who have been adopted in Oklahoma, do we have a question? Okay. So for those youth who have been adopted in Oklahoma, there are some special income provisions for those adopted from permanent custody, from DHS, or from a tribe. At the time of submitting the application, there are no income limitations, but there are income limits at the time of college enrollment. And you will notice that these income limits are significantly increased from those of the general population's requirements. So basically, if you adopted your child between the age of 0 and 12 years old, the income limit at the time of their college enrollment would need to be less than $150,000. If you adopted them between the age of 13 and 17 years old, their income, or your income at the time of college enrollment, would need to be less than $200,000. And that is kid specific. It doesn't necessarily matter how many dependents you have or anything like that, like those general population income requirements. So before we move on to the next thing, does anyone have any questions about Oklahoma's promise? Okay, if no questions on that, we'll move on to the federal Pell Grant program. So undergraduate students with exceptional financial need who have not yet earned a bachelor's are those who are eligible for the federal Pell Grant. A Pell Grant does not need to be repaid. And I put a star by this because there are certain circumstances in which you might have to pay that back. And those are things like maybe you withdrew early in a semester that you received that grant for, or maybe you received it for more than one school at a time, things like that. So there's no situation in which you would have to pay it back if you're going to school and just going to the one and not receiving more than you should have to begin with. And the way to apply for the federal Pell Grant is through the FAFSA information. So we're going to take a brief break from talking about the specifics of the federal Pell Grant, and we're going to discuss the FAFSA, because that is your main entrance to financial aid overall in college. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So first, I just have this video, and this is from the Department of Education, and it just kind of gives an overview on how to fill out the FAFSA form, what things you will need to gather before you fill out that form, etc. So we'll go ahead and watch that real quick.
You may have heard the expression, life is not about the destination, but the journey. Well, getting an education is an important part of that journey, and you can get money to help you pay for it. Each year, billions of dollars become available through the free application.
Sorry about that.
for federal student aid FAFSA form. Just fill it out. This application offers access to federal student aid for grants, loans, and work-study funds. States and schools also use the FAFSA form to distribute their own grants and scholarships. Where can you find the FAFSA form? We post the FAFSA form on October 1 for the next school year. It's available at fafsa.gov in both English and Spanish. So, let's get started. You'll need your Social Security number, alien registration number if you're an eligible non-citizen, and possibly your federal income tax return, W-2s, and other records to show money you earned. You may be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool. This tool lets you securely transfer information from your federal tax return to the FAFSA form to help you complete it more quickly. In addition, we recommend creating an account before starting your FAFSA form. Your account username and password, called your FSA ID, allows you to sign your FAFSA form and loan contracts electronically. You can also access certain information online with your FSA ID. Your FSA ID is your digital signature. Create your own and only have one. Parents and students should keep their FSA IDs separate. Why? The FSA ID is a legal signature. It shouldn't be shared. Sharing it may result in unauthorized changes to your account, or it may delay your financial aid. Plus, you'll need your FSA ID to renew your FAFSA form each year. So, protect your information by keeping your FSA ID safe and secure. Your FAFSA form has 3 sets of questions to answer. Personal information, which includes your name, email address, marital status, and schools you're interested in. Financial information, such as your income and assets. Certain personal and financial information about your legal parents if you're a dependent student. Not sure about your dependency status? Visit studentaid.gov/dependency to find out who must provide parent information on the FAFSA form. Also, learn what to do if you live with only one parent or aren't in contact with your parents. You can also ask the financial aid staff at your college or career school for help figuring this out. Since colleges and career schools use the FAFSA form to consider you for financial aid programs, the form asks you to list up to 10 schools you are considering. Be sure to list a school even if you haven't applied to the school or received an acceptance letter yet. You can always go back and update the list later. One great feature of the FAFSA form is that it may let you skip questions that don't pertain to you. And if you're not sure how to answer a question, you can chat with a knowledgeable agent from our contact center. Submitting your application online, remember, if you are a dependent student, your parent must use their own FSA ID to sign the form as well. Submitting your FAFSA form online is the fastest and easiest option, but you can also fill out and print the PDF version, which you can drop in the mail, or ask your college or career school to submit the FAFSA form for you. If you provided an email address and submitted your form online, you'll receive an email within a few days letting you know that we processed your application. Then, an administrator from any school that you listed on the form and that has accepted you for admission will reach out to let you know what aid you're eligible for at that school. Congrats, you're one step closer to getting money for school and starting on one of life's most exciting journeys. For more helpful resources on eligibility, deadlines, and items that you need to fill out the FAFSA form, visit studentaid.gov.
Okay, so that's just kind of an overview of how to start the application, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to check the chat here. So Sandy says, sorry, I missed the first 10 minutes, but I saw the kids must resident in Oklahoma. My kids were adopted from Oklahoma, but we live in Kansas. Does that mean they don't qualify? And thank you for that response. That is fantastic. Looks like residency is a requirement for both, as well as for OK Promise. I know there are caveats in these situations, but I'd like to know what is available for cross-state resources, given my boys were adopted out of OKDHS into Arkansas residency. Thanks. We will definitely check on some of those things for you guys, because that is very helpful information to know. It's not something I have already included in our presentation today, but I will find out and make sure we get that information emailed out to everyone. So we're going to keep going on the FAFSA and go back to some of those specifics. So first, I'm just going to review a couple of things that it mentioned in the video. So studentaid.gov is where you go to access the FAFSA application. And traditionally, that application has come available October 1st of every year. But this year, they are making it available in December. They didn't specify a specific date as of yet. But if you're needing to apply for the 2024 or 2025 year, be on the lookout for that around December. And you want to complete this application as soon as possible after it is released for the most opportunities. So while some of the things like the federal Pell Grant and other things like that are not dependent on, the number of people that apply, there's not a limited number. Those things are kind of available regardless of how many people have applied if you qualify. Once this FAFSA information is sent to your individual schools, you've been accepted at the school, that school is then going to use this FAFSA application to see if you qualify for any individual scholarships, work study, anything else available at their particular school. And those resources are limited. So you want to make sure you get that application in as soon as possible so you're not missing out on any of those additional opportunities. And then you'll need to recomplete this form each year for the upcoming school year. So we're going to talk about some, actually a few more general things about the federal Pell Grant. So the award amount changes yearly. And what they do is they identify what that yearly award is, but then they're going to split that evenly between your 2 semesters. And this is dispersed directly to your bursar account or your financial aid account at your school. And I put a star beside this because if you have anything left over, so once all of your financial aid has been applied to your expenses and you have a zero balance for your expenses, if you have any remaining funds left, what they'll do is they'll either, depending on what settings you have on your account, they'll either direct deposit that to your bank or write you a check for that difference in amount. And then that's able to be used for books or other items that you might need for college that you don't purchase directly through the school. The maximum amount of time to receive this is 6 years. And that can also be broken down into 12 semesters or 12 terms. So maybe you don't go consecutively and you have some break in there. It just can't exceed 12 terms. And the award amount that you're going to receive in a federal Pell Grant depends on a couple of things. So the expected family contribution, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit for those who meet that independent status. And it also is going to depend on the cost of attendance at your school. It will depend on whether you plan to enroll full-time or part-time, and then also whether or not you plan to attend for a full academic year or just part of that year. And currently for 2023 and 2024, that yearly maximum amount is $7,395. So you could receive anywhere up to that in that Pell Grant, depending on these, things here on the right. So before I go on to this dependency status and kind of the specifics of this, does anyone have any general questions about the FAFSA or application process? Okay, if no questions on that, we'll kind of keep going. So the dependency status.
Lacey, I'm sorry. Lacey, I was trying to come off mute. Can you just go back one part on, go back one slide for just one?
Let me see if it'll let me here.
If you can.
Yeah, not a problem. To this one?
Okay. Yep, that's it. I just needed to, I was writing down some notes. So thank you. That's how I did
it. Not a problem. Okay, so for the FAFSA dependency status, basically when you're completing your FAFSA, there's going to be this set of questions. So these questions are basically to help them determine, are you considered a dependent of someone else or are you considered independent? So there's any number of things on here that you could potentially fall under. So maybe, are you married? Were you born before a certain date? Are you a member of the armed forces or a veteran of the armed forces? Do you have children? So a lot of different things that might qualify you as independent. But the one that's going to be most applicable to our population that we kind of have in common is this one that I have highlighted here. And so this question reads, at any time since you turned age 13, were both your parents deceased, or were you in foster care, or were you a ward of the court or a dependent or ward of the court? So basically, if you have a kiddo who, since they've turned 13, even if it is by one day, were in DHS custody or tribal custody after the age of 13, they're going to mark yes on this. And that will consider them as independent status. And so when they are considered independent, whether that's through this foster care requirement or any of the other requirements, if you're considered independent, then only your financial information is going to be provided on that FAFSA information. That means your parents' information does not have to be provided. So say you were in foster care after the age of 13 and you reunified, that still means that only you as the student's information is going on there. Even if you were adopted after the age of 13, still only your financial information would go on there. And so with that, you're probably, as a student just going into college, you're probably not going to be making a ton of money yet, unless you've like gone viral on YouTube and have a great channel, something like that, or just have put in a lot of really hard work. You're probably not going to be above any of the income requirement where you're going to receive a small amount. You're still probably going to be close to that full Pell Grant every year if you're meeting this requirement highlighted in yellow. And then once you complete this FAFSA, you mark yes, you're considered independent. Once you identify the school that you're going to attend and they start to process your financial aid, they're going to require that you have documentation of your independent status. So what this looks like is a letter, and your child welfare specialist can assist you with this, or I know our OACN department also helps youth with this if they've maybe been out of care for a while and they don't have connection with the worker or the worker's no longer there. To be able to get a letter, basically it just simply states, yes, the child was in foster care after this age, or maybe between certain date and certain date. I don't think it typically says that. I think it just verifies that you were in custody after the age of 13. And you just provide that documentation to the school so that they can verify that you are in fact independent, and only your financial information should count towards that financial aid. So the next thing we're going to talk about a little bit is student loans. This is not my favorite one to talk about because it's nobody's preferred method. But maybe you don't meet any of the age requirements, or your kiddo doesn't meet any of the age requirements of some of these other programs. And maybe financially you can't afford to put them through college. And so this might be one of your only options. So I did want to include some information on it just so we have it. So we're going to watch this little video. It is from 2016. So the interest rates, you guys know how things are functioning right now. So the interest rates that they mention are not still accurate, but the information and the, just the description of how these things work is still very much accurate. So we'll just watch this really quick.
Meet Zoe. Zoe's a high school senior that's been accepted into 5 colleges. She's very excited. However, she's also a little bit confused. She sees several types of student loans in her award letter and doesn't know what to do with them. What should she do? Well, beyond watching our other 2 introductory loan videos, Loans 101 and Loans Mistakes and Best Practices, Zoe should first read carefully through her award letter. This document, which details the amount of aid she was awarded, also tells her exactly what she needs to do to get her loan, including how to sign the loan contract, called the Master Promissory Note, and whether or not she needs to do entrance counseling, which is a brief, free online course in student loan management. Then, assuming that's done, her next step is actually quite simple. Understand how federal student loans work. The most common ones are called direct loans, also known as Stafford loans. These have a fixed interest rate of 4.29% as of 2016 and have a loan amount dependent on your need. They also have one rather unusual wrinkle. They can be subsidized or unsubsidized. Subsidized loans don't start accruing interest or requiring their holders to pay back principal until 6 months after graduation. This can make them financially a great deal, though accordingly, they're reserved for students who demonstrate greater financial need. In contrast to this, unsubsidized Stafford loans are available to everyone, with principal payments that are deferred until 6 months after you graduate. However, Unlike subsidized Stafford loans, interest continues to accrue on these loans while the holder is in college. Thus, if you can, we highly recommend paying off this accrued interest before it's added to the balance post-graduation. After all, the last thing you want to do is pay interest on your interest. So that's Stafford loans. However, there are two other major types of federal loans, Perkins loans and Direct Plus loans. Perkins loans have extremely favorable terms, a fixed 5% APR, and no interest or principal charged until 9 months after graduation. While this is certainly great, keep in mind to qualify for a Perkins loan, you'll need to demonstrate exceptional financial need on your FAFSA. Next, we have Direct Plus loans, which are either given to graduate students or to the parents of undergraduates. Direct Plus loans are designed to cover the difference between the cost of attendance and the financial aid received. Like Stafford loans, they have deferred payments until 6 months after graduation, unless you're a parent, in which case you'll have to request it, with interest that accrues throughout college in either case. Finally, if for whatever reason federal student loans aren't enough to cover Zoe's tuition costs, Zoe can also apply for private student loans, most likely with her parents as co-signers. These loans can be a good financing solution, and our recommended provider makes it easy to get multiple private student loan offers with one simple application. However, be warned, private student loans aren't nearly as favorable as the federal ones. Their interest rates are frequently higher, plus they require a credit score of at least 650 and lack many other benefits, such as income-based repayment plans. Hopefully you and Zoe now have a better understanding of student loans. Be sure to watch our next video to learn more about repaying your federal student loans, and be sure to check out our website, where you can.
Okay, so before I go into kind of summarizing a little bit about the student loans, I forgot to pause and see if anyone had any questions on the wrap up of the federal Pell Grant or the dependency status. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to unmute. Okay, so we'll keep rolling with the student loan info. So a lot of what I'm about to show you is kind of a review of what he just said, but just broken down into some quick key points to remember. So we're just going to compare those direct subsidized and unsubsidized. For the subsidized, the undergrad student needs to show financial need. The school is going to determine how much they're able to borrow based on their financial need and other aid received. And then interest for these does not accrue during certain periods, including times that they are actively in school and the 6 months after they have graduated. Then for the unsubsidized, these are for undergraduate students. In general, there's no necessary need to show that you have a financial need. Same as with the subsidized, the school is going to determine how much you can borrow for this. And then interest accrues during all periods for these loans, so including times that you are in school and the 6 months after graduation. So your interest is going to accrue much faster and at a much higher rate on these particular type of loans. Next, we'll talk about the Direct Plus or the Parent Plus loans. So in order to access these, the first thing that needs to happen is the student needs to fill out that FAFSA application. My computer's being a little squirrely here. There we go. And then secondly, the parent, we're going to talk about it in a parent sense, since I think that's kind of the general population here. I'll briefly go over for graduate students, but for the most part with parents, you're going to go online and fill out a separate online application for this loan. And it doesn't allow you to have any adverse credit history. So what that means is it's fine if your score is not that high or if it's on the lower end. It's fine if you have, a large amount of debt. Those aren't necessarily things that are going to disqualify you from receiving this. But what will disqualify you from receiving this is things like a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, or a car or vehicle repossession in the last 5 years. Any accounts over 2,500 that are in default or are in collections, things like that. So things that are ringing as negative on that credit history report. And then this loan will be in the amount of up to the cost of attendance minus the amount of any other aid received. So other scholarships that are possibly available. So this is kind of a broad variety of things, but a couple we're going to mention specifically. So we talked a minute about this, but through your FAFSA application, that FAFSA application will go to your school of choice or your schools of choice, and they will identify if there's anything within the school, such as scholarships, work study, or other programs that they have that you would be eligible for. And so when they send you that, letter or email verifying what financial package you're able to receive, it will include all those specifics in there. Additionally, there are other things that you can apply for privately. There are tons of websites out there. One I found recently that I thought was really helpful and really user-friendly and specific to Oklahoma is www.okcollegestart.com. Again, at the end of this, I will put that link in the chat box. But this website helps you, it gives you information about college and paying for college and a variety of resources. But there's also a scholarship section where you can go and filter by certain qualifications. And there are private scholarships for all kinds of things. There are scholarships for being left-handed, for being blind, for certain activities you participate in, like sports, dance, or other activities. So on this website, you can just put in any things that apply to you, and it will filter by all of the things that you might qualify for. And then it will have access to those applications for you to go in and submit. There's other websites like scholarships.com, fastweb.com that have a very similar format. The only problem, I guess we'll call it a problem, with these private scholarship applications is you have a large pool of people that are finding this resource and applying for these. So these are much harder to access. You may have great success in being awarded some of these, but there's just such a big pool of people applying to them that you don't have as high of a success rate in receiving them. There's also the Oklahoma's Youth with Promise, which is a specific scholarship that we'll talk about here in just a second. So this is the Oklahoma's Youth with Promise. And this is a scholarship through the Oklahoma City Community Foundation. And it is specifically for youth who were in Oklahoma foster care system or aged out at the time of their graduation. So this is the most recent flyer that they have that I've just taken a screenshot of here. But this flyer is easily available on their website. There's also a QR code down at the bottom. I don't know if that's big enough to scan, but it walks you through their application process, the requirements. And it looks like that this is actually something that you can apply for multiple times. So maybe you receive it once and you want to reapply in the future in your additional college years. It just shows here you need a college GPA of at least 2.0 in order to reapply. So some other requirements: you have to be an Oklahoma high school graduate or have received your GED, 25 years old or younger at the time of application, and in foster care or aged out at the time of graduation. And this one actually doesn't say specifically that you have to be an Oklahoma resident at the time of application. It does just say need to have graduated or gotten your GED from an Oklahoma high school. So that would kind of cover some of those individual situations that you guys had asked about with this one. So that's all of the general information I have. And I'm going to stop screen sharing for just a minute with the presentation and head over to the web page. Let's see here. We'll start with the OACSA web page. This is just the general OACSA page when you come to it. And OACSA stands for Oklahoma Successful Adulthood Program. And there's all kinds of resources for teens and young adults on here. You can request youth. Yeah, go for it.
We can't see that.
Oh, let me stop sharing and reshare. Hold on just a second. Thank you for letting me know. It's important to see this. It's a really great website. There we go. Is that better? Okay, perfect. So this just shows some upcoming events. There's all kinds of really great stuff on this website, and I encourage you to go look around. So the specific to today's presentation, there's this resources for youth and pathways to education. So we're just going to click on that. And so this talks about the, oops, I went back to the main page. There we go. So this talks about the education and training voucher program. It's got some resources for high school students. And it also has a spot here where you can meet your education specialist. And it just gives some information about the current education specialist. And there are some of the ones that if you had questions about the ETV or the tuition voucher, they can kind of assist with that. Or if you're, having difficulty with the application, they can assist with any of those things or any other questions. But there are tons of things. So like I said, I just encourage you to check out this website if you can, or when you have some time. So another, this is the OK College Start website that shows those scholarship availability that I was just talking about. So this also has a bunch of different resources. So specifically for Oklahoma in the financial aid aspect, it talks about Oklahoma's Promise. It has the link directly to their webpage. It also talks about the tuition waiver and the ETV, educational training voucher, and has direct links to both of those as well. And it talks about that Oklahoma's Youth with Promise scholarship, and has connections back to the OACN page and the NRCYS page as well. But up here at the top, it talks about financial aid 101, financial fitness, just some general financial tips in going into college. It talks about career planning, different college planning aspects. And then this is the scholarship piece that I was mentioning. So you can go in here to this Find Scholarships. It's thinking. So you can create a profile that kind of has all of your unique aspects. So maybe your GPA, your activities you participate in, any other things that are unique or special to you. And then it will kind of match you to different scholarships that match your profile that you may be eligible for. You can also find scholarships by keywords. So if you just want to search for them, you can totally do that too. So tons of great resources on those private scholarships here. Okay, so I'm going to stop my screen share. And we have just a few minutes left. So I wanted to leave that open if anybody has anything they wanted to add, any personal experiences, or any questions that you
have. Lacey, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
What scholarships are available for our youth who are like non-citizens or who may run into issues of non-citizenship?
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know of any very specifically, but I do know on that webpage that I was just on, the okcollegestart.org, when you're creating the profile and marking those things that are unique to you, that is one of the things that you're able to check. So it can filter them by that. And you can also search specifically for that on that website as well.
So on the Oklahoma Youth with Promise one, that said in foster care, age out of foster care, what about those who were adopted out of foster care? Are they still?
No, that one is specifically for, you have to either be in foster care or have aged out already at the time of graduation. So that one is super specific to those older youth who did not achieve permanency at the time of their graduation.
Got it.
And for those of you who had asked questions about like the Arkansas residency and kind of living on the state line, make sure if you haven't already to drop your email in the chat box, and I can follow up on those things specifically and get that information to you.
And Lacey, do you have the link to the first FAFSA video that you played that you can share?
I can sure get it. Let's see. And then, yes, I will add those other links in the chat box too. Thank you for reminding me. Yep, and it is just right there on YouTube. And the Department of Education or the Federal Student Aid has their own YouTube channel, and they actually have quite a few videos, and that's where this one came from. But this is the link directly to that YouTube video about how to apply for FAFSA. And then let me grab those links for the OACSA website, just so you guys have easy access to those. Oh, I think I sent that last one directly to someone, so let me redo that. Okay, this one coming is the OACSA website. This one is the YouTube on how to apply for the FAFSA. And then this last one I'm about to drop is that okcollegestart.org. And I have one last thing. It's actually a PDF that I'm going to add that is about student loans and just kind of general information all about that. So let me see. Kelly, do you know how to add just a link to something? Or drop a file in the chat?
Are you going to be able to email this out to everybody?
Are you talking about like the slides and presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
I sure can. Yeah, if you want, if you haven't already dropped your email for one of the other things, if you would like the slides, yeah, just go ahead and drop your email in there and we'll kind of send it as a group. I'll send that, because I can't figure out how to attach that specific document in the chat box. I'll send the student loan info document, the slides, and the links to those things as well. And then if you had a specific question that I noted about a specific circumstance, I'll follow up with you on that as well. But we can send those general things out to everyone.
You should be able to, if you wanted to go ahead and attach it down at the very bottom of the chat box, there's like 4 icons and then the 3 little dots. The one that looks like a square should allow you to attach a file.
I can't see the chat for some reason, but it's probably because I'm electronically challenged.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's see. I'm a little electronically challenged too. That's why I'm a little slow on the things, but that's okay. We'll get there together. Okay, so now I figured out the file. So that's the Federal Student Loan Basics for students. And then if you can't see the chat, so I have mine closed. So if you look down at the bottom of your screen, do you see all the different little buttons like the mute, stop video, all of those things?
I do not, but I'm wondering if it's because I'm on my phone.
Oh, it might be. Did you where did you drop your email in the chat box? Oh, well, you said you couldn't see the chat box. What is your email if you're comfortable sharing it out loud? And then I can get you those resources sent. Or if not, I can give my email, and then if anybody had any further questions or anything, feel free to check in with me. So mine is Lacey, LACEY .Sorrels, SORRELS at okdhs.org. So if you weren't able to see any links or anything like that, feel free to just shoot me a message and I will make sure to get those to you. And then for those of you who did drop your email in the chat box, we will get all of that sent out to you. And then any information about upcoming events will be sent as well. So if we don't have any other questions, that'll be it for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us and hope you have a great rest of your week.